Akihisa was a half-wit who enrolled in a school that was a bootleg version assassination classroom. Apart from experimenting with human idiocy, they also summon fantasy creatures who are then used by the students to move up the class ranks, with Akihisa taking adventure of the privilege to battle since his brain was no good. Before this, Akihisa, a guy with idiocy written all over him, writes a placement exam to get into Fumizuki Academy, and in the exam room, the dumbass has his eyes away from his papers and glued to a girl with big plots. He then sees her fall due to being sick, so he tries to save the day, but he is scolded by the examiner to mind his business. Days after the exams pass, and he goes to the school after being given admission, but he sees one of the teachers outside who takes back what he said about him being a fool. This lifts Akihisa's hopes, but the teacher crashes it down, calling him a bigger idiot than he had thought. He then hands a letter to him, indicating the class he is assigned to. Shortly after, Akihisa enters the school building and walks to his designated class. On his way, he sees Class 2 and notes it to be well furnished, so the loser heads to his class and expects the same, only for him to see how bad his class state was. His classroom looks like a decade-old abandoned project, with all the desks so broken that he uses glue to fix them. He walks in and picks a seat while the homeroom teacher tries to address them, but the podium breaks, shattering his will to continue teaching, so he leaves them to study. Loser Hisa sees his friends, Yuji and Mizuki, to be in the same class, so he greets them casually, but it causes the flat-chested tsundere to bully him. While at it, the ideal girl with bouncy milkers, whom he defended during her exams, enters the classroom and greets him. She then picks the seat next to him. He notices her demeanor and realizes that she is sick and the class won't be a good place for her, so during the break, he talks to Yuji about it, but he reads him like a book before suggesting to the class that they engage in inter-class wars. Yuji immediately asks Akihisa to announce the war on Classy, but they turn his face into mashed cheese with their fists, causing the war to be on officially. The start of the war involves using their avatars to battle each other like Pokemon, or they get to compete in tests. Classy shows them why they are better in foils through all their plans until the last minute when Haimji, the sick endowed member of Class F, returns after schooling a student in the aspect of the test. Hence, she bitch-slaps the leftover students' avatars with hers, earning them the class victory. After the whole drama, Yuji suggests that they do not switch seats with the members of Classy, which sounds so contradictory to what they had intended, but before he can reveal his strategy, a Class A student enters their class and declares war on them. Himiji, the ace of Class 2 Fahrenheit, tries to get info out of Yuji, but she stops to check around when she senses bloodlust emanating from a stalker. The teachers brief the principal about the turn of events, and she wonders why Class F didn't change class after winning. The losers use a quality superglue to fix their broken seats, but the matter doesn't sit well with Akihisa, a simp who wants his crush to have a better place to stay, whines like a dog to Yuji. Yuji tells him to calm his balls and they'll have the top quality facility in no time, since he believes Classa will lose to them. After that, they walk to Classa to speak on the terms of their exams, and it is there the valedictorian makes a condition whereby the loser does anything the winner wants. Yuji cockily agrees to the term on the condition that his class picks the subject. Lunchtime arrives and the losers gather to discuss the interest of the valedictorian. Still, Miharu jumps her love interest and begins to smother her dry plots all over her, and in the bid to get her out of the way, Akihisa gets ragdolled and forced into promising to treat Shimada on a date on a weekend. At the end of the class for that day, Akihisa goes back to the class and sees Madame Milkers writing a love letter, so he jumps to a conclusion and becomes moody since he thinks it's for Yuji, but as soon as he leaves her, he boy thoughts concerning Yuji and runs for his life when he is approached. The day of their battle commences and the two classes go head to head. Useless Class F shows potential with the help of Voyeur and Himiji, but they lost nevertheless against the valedictorian, and this is due to Yuji not acing an elementary school history test. This leads to Class F trading their coffee tables for cardboard boxes. At the outcome of their results, Class F students whine like a bitch and vent their frustration on him, but they stop when Shauko, the valedictorian, enters their dirty class and asks Yuji to go out with her. The bastard refuses a maiden in love, so she slugs him and drags him to their date. On a weekend, Akihisa is bundled by the girls to go to the cinema, and they suggest a scary movie, but the coward tries to whimper his way out. He is then interrupted by Yuji, whom Shauko cuffs and forces to watch a long movie 2 times against his will. During school days, Akihisa, the brokey, divides his instant ramen into parts to save some for after school. He heads to school happily and hits Kubo, leading the bread in his mouth to fall to the ground, and Akihisa latches onto the opportunity to beg for it. Kubo feels embarrassed and misinterprets the situation, but allows the sore loser to go for it, but as the plot will have it, Akihasa's homeroom teacher mistakenly steps on it. He enters the building and sees Himeji, shyly latching onto her letter before running off. Yuuji then interrupts his train of thought and complains about the hell Shouko put him through. The two of them sulk like puppies, complaining about how hard life treats them while walking to class. On getting there, Akihisa plays the blame game, but Shimada points out how useless he was in their battle with Class 2A. The bell suddenly rings, signaling for homeroom and interrupting their arguments, but what silenced them the most was the fact that Nishimura will be their new homeroom teacher, and he plans on educating the retarded class. During the break, the boys lament on the rooftop about how dire their conditions are, and to make matters worse, broke Akihisa is approached by the same girls he took to the movies, asking him for crepe, and the pea-brained brat can't say no to a girl's request, so he sacrifices his already diminished savings and shortens his ramen rations. The following weekend, he meets up with the girls who look stunning and treats them to their wish, but he cannot afford to get one for himself, and in the process of trying to get himself spoon-fed, the gorilla girl bursts his bubble and chases after him like a purse thief. They all hide from her for a brief moment, but then they decide to go to school where they can use their avatars to battle things out. On getting to the school grounds, they meet one of the teachers who is working overtime and are permitted to use their pocket monsters. The battle goes on for a brief period, causing Shimada and Miharu to get evicted, and just like one of the teachers, Nishimura shows up and bundles the losers to partake in supplementary lessons. The two of them go to the rooftop and have a heartfelt discussion concerning a love letter, but Himeji lies and calls it something she has to find the courage to do by herself. Akihasa's avatar is a special one. Its usefulness is helping the teachers with heavy labor, but the downside is that the pain suffered by the avatar gets transferred to the loser. During lunch break, the loser's stomach grumbles due to having little or no food to eat. But then Shimada speaks up about cooking extra but doesn't have it with her, and it makes the poor loser make fun of her. As they brawl it out, her younger sister enters the class nonchalantly and insults Akihisa at first sight before running to meet him. And this shocks her sister, so she demands for explanation like a jealous housewife. The little girl calls the idiot her future husband, and this triggers the remaining classmates into beating him into a pulp. Heizuki then hands Shimada the lunchboxes she made, but the tsundere ruins her chance to give one of them to her crush by bad-mouthing him, and this gives Himeji a chance to offer him hers, triggering another vandalism of the poor boy by his remaining classmates. They later head to the roof to have a bite, and Akihasa's friends taste the food before him, leading to several near-death experiences. Homeboy later finds out that Himeji doesn't taste before cooking, but he still tries it either way, and doing this nearly leads to the loss of his life. The poor boy ends up feeling more hungry, and he comes across Heizuki. The two of them try looking for Shimada, who is far away, but due to the gorilla girl always ruining her good moments, she has to bail. She later finds him and tries to offer him food, but it gets too difficult for her to say, giving Kubo a chance to snatch her crush. Shimada then realizes her loss and hands her younger sister one of the lunch boxes and bids her farewell. Akihisa and Kubo get to the front of a vending machine in the staff room, but they are interrupted, and Akihisa gets whisked away for compulsory supplementary lessons by his teacher, ruining his chance of getting a proper lunch. Shimada, who had been waiting outside for a long, loses patience and feasts on her food, but she gets so emotional that she can't finish it, so she goes to throw it away as luck would have it. Akihisa sees her and she hands him her leftover happily before calling him an idiot. The principal sits in her office, wondering what she'd do with some toys, so she decides to host a treasure hunt. Before then, he goes to school, and on his way, he sees Heizuki looking all worried due to not being able to find her mascot character for the first time. The ever-daft Akihisa puts 2 and 2 and it adds up, so he takes her to the road where the toy is, but they experience difficulty in getting the item till it gets ruined. They encounter the principal, who sees how sad Heizuki is and thinks up something concerning her. In school, the students go through the flyers, and Akihisa finally gets his time to shine since he has a lot of video game experience when it comes to treasure hunting. Nishimura then interrupts their discussion and groups the bums into teams. The treasure's coordinates can be gotten either through solving multiple choices or other different means. Akihisa displays his amazing precision in treasure hunting with the use of casting pencils as a die. One of his deductions leads to finding the chiffon cake baked by Himeji, but before he can return the basket, she sees him and offers him and his friends. With nowhere left to run, the boy sabotages themselves with the poison prepared by her. Kubo's coordinates point him to Akihisa's shoe locker, and he tries to stop himself from the impure feelings he has towards the loser. Rather than treasure hunting, Miharu uses the opportunity to exploit Shimada while claiming that her plots are the treasures that her coordinates are pointing to. They all comb through the school, and when Akihasa's team finally gets their hands on the needed treasure, the girls from the other class try to get it away from them by engaging in avatar battle, but they get saved by the bell, hence earning them the right to the treasure. Akihisa and his friends try the bracelet, but theirs fail, leaving him with the only working one. Later that day, he hands over the mascot character to Hazuki, and she thanks her husband for being so reliable. Summer arrives and Yuji decides to visit Akihisa's home on the weekend. He tries taking an early morning shower only to be frightened by cold water and the broke host who can't afford a hot shower. The two of them later vent their frustration on each other by spilling Coke on themselves, resulting in them trying to sneak into the school grounds to use its hot water, but they get caught by Iron Man and are forced to clean the pool the following weekend. Later in class, Akihisa does nothing but whine about his problems, but Yuji decides to invite other friends to help them out with the pool, including the girls. The day arrives and Shimada brings Hazuki along with her, a mischievous girl who uses her sister's plot pads to try and sway the loser into loving her more. This results in a questionable reaction from the guys. The other girls show and they get decent reactions from the boys compared to Shimada, and this causes her voice actor to switch to Germany, rendering everyone unable to fathom what she's saying. Immediately, Yuji tries to understand what's going on. His wife-to-be prevents him from having worldly desires by trying to eliminate his eyeballs. Not long after that, they end up participating in a competition where the winner won't eat the poison prepared by Himeji, but in the process, Akihisa challenges Hideyoshi, the femboy, and ends up nose bleeding after seeing him without a top. They later clean up the pool and head to a public bath to refresh themselves, and it becomes a trend for the public to classify Hideyoshi as someone who needs to have a separate bath compared to both genders. As the guys have a soak, they hear the girls washing each other's back and it arouses their curiosity. But amidst their joyful demeanor, Shimada vents out her frustration for not having enough milkers to seduce guys compared to the rest of them. Not long after, one of the girls makes a fake rumor about the bathtubs being connected and the guys try to have a look at them, but they get soaked in hot water. This triggers Akihisa to use his avatar in the bathtub. Before this, it could only be activated with the permission of a teacher, but due to the bracelet he wears, he summons his avatar and tries to have it cop a look at the girls, but the girls summon theirs and slap his, causing him irredeemable pains. As soon as he loses, Iron Man appears and whisks him away to have supplementary lessons. Yuji wakes up with Shouko by his side, so he tries to call the cops, but she blackmails him by vowing to burn all his porn stash. The loser submits to her totally after being told that Akihisa gave her a couple's ticket. Later that day, Shouko drags his ass to the venue while locking his arm like a pro wrestler. On getting there, Yuji sights Akihisa and Hideyoshi and tries venting his frustration on them, but his woman locks him and forces them to take a picture. Not long after, a delinquent shows up with his girlfriend and tries forcing his way into the amusement park, but he is tricked into taking a silly picture with his partner. Yuji and Shouko head into the amusement park and wonder what to try, but they encounter Himeji, who dresses as a mascot and recommends the haunted house. Yuji, being a chicken, tries to get away, but Shouko locks him to her and drags him to the venue. On getting there, they try coercing Yuji into signing a wedding contract with Shouko, but he reads through their gimmicks and doesn't agree. The coward later enters the haunted house with his woman, but she chases after him after his voice has been used to set him up to get her angry. Upon escaping the venue, the two of them rest on a bench and Shouko asks him if he'd like to eat, but before she can get to give him what she prepared for him, an announcement echoes signaling a special menu prepared for them, so they head there and have a meal. Shortly after, Shimada and Hideyoshi get on stage and announce the special mock wedding event. This riles up Shouko and she forces her fiancé to participate. They will be given 5 questions in total, and if they answer correctly, they'll get to choose to do the wedding ritual, so Yuji plans to answer all the questions incorrectly. The couple is thrown questions and Yuji notices how strange they are. He finally realizes how scripted the event is, so he gives up. The delinquent couple interrupts to ruin the quiz, but it is to no avail, hence Yuji is dressed up as the groom while he waits for his murderous mistress in her bride outfit. As soon as she shows up, he sees how pretty he is and almost kisses her, but the delinquents make fun of her and it causes her to run off like the bitch she is. The students leave the event and look for her, but they don't see her anywhere. Instead, they spot Yuji, who acts as if he doesn't care and walks past them. Meanwhile, the delinquents leave the venue, and as soon as Yuji spots them, he jumps them and gets into a ferocious battle with the male delinquent. A while later, he spots her beside the riverbank and pep talks her into loving him again, and she starts acting all lovey-dovey around him. Akihisa gets pestered by Shimada after seeing him with one of her photographs, but he confesses that he is interested in the femboy rather than her, who is a real woman with no milkers, so she challenges him to a battle with their avatars. As soon as she summons hers, he tries his own but it doesn't work. Unknowing to him, the entire summoning system is faulty, resulting into thousands of Akihisa's avatar being summoned. Before the events, a student sneaks into the school's technical facility and tries hacking into it, but in the process, he disconnects a wire that leads to the malfunctioning of the entire summoning system. Now the principal and the staff have to find a way to fix things to prevent the problem from escalating. The students in their class try summoning their avatars and they notice how inconsistent the system is. Meanwhile, the principal cannot risk brute forcing her way into the server room to fix the problem, so she decides that they'll use the errand boy Akihisa to help them out. Not long after, she summons Akihisa to her office and instructs him on what to do while he receives guidance from his friends. His avatar goes through trials and tribulations in the air vent before coming across berserk avatars that belong to his friends. They cannot be controlled, hence they whooped him till he gets KE'd, and this leads to Nishimura dragging him for supplementary lessons. After the lessons, he thinks of a way to rack up his points, and that's where Yuuji comes in. By suggesting elementary math, the loser can shamelessly increase his points by thousands before going into the vents to fight the berserk avatars again. This time around, he turns the table and finishes them off like getting candy from a baby. He finally gets into the server room, but there are the boss's avatars, Himeji's and Shimada's. They beat the living crap out of him, but with resilience and plot armor, he takes them down just then. Himeji's avatar grows bigger and he wonders how he'll defeat her, so he makes her take some tests and fail them intentionally to bring her avatar's score to the minimum, low enough for him to defeat. The shameless loser uses all the underhanded tactics to grant himself a W against the berserkers. Shortly after, he restores the server while bringing normalcy back to the school. Nishimura then enters and carries all the students who lost in the avatar duel for supplementary lessons, and even the fool tags along because his poor Himeji got roped in. Akihisa is so broke to the point where he constantly gaslights himself into taking salt and sugar water as meals, but on that day, his beloved elder sister comes home while putting on a bathrobe to check up on him. He lets her in and asks her why she is around, so she says she came over to monitor him and judge if he is worthy enough to live on his own. She makes some corny jokes and then tries to get intimate with her brother up to the point that will make society uncomfortable, but her brother, being a man of the law, stands his ground against her. She then questions his sexuality and wishes for him to like guys rather than girls. A while after, she checks the loser's grades and sees how dumb he is, so she questionably urges him to do better at school. In school the following day, Shaoko asks her boyfriend for his cell phone to check if he's having an affair. He refuses at first, but after a little bit of persuasion, he gives in and she goes through it only to find out that he has spoken to Akihisa more than her, so she gets jealous, and before she returns the phone, a message pops in from Akihisa asking if he could spend the night at Yuuji's place, and this triggers Shaoko into dealing with her boyfriend for cheating on her. A while later, Akihisa shows up to the class and concentrates on his studies, shocking the teachers and others around him that after class is over, his friends decide they'll be studying at his place, which makes him sweat buckets and cook up excuses, but they swat them all like flies before proceeding to his place. On the way to his house, they suspect him of having a girlfriend, and it causes the girls a great deal of uneasiness. Upon entry, they see signs of a girl living with him and question him a lot, but it causes him to spill the beans. Shortly after his sister arrives, they sit around a table and introduce themselves to her. Yoshi and Yuuji then go to the kitchen to prepare a meal for them while his sister shows them his embarrassing baby photos. The airhead prepares a good meal for his friends and his sister confesses to loving him despite being dumb. The remaining girls get defensive and indirectly confess to him, but he is too daft to realize it, so he cries in agony. Later that evening, they gather for a study session and Akihisa's sister recommends tutoring them before going through the process of revealing her younger brother's kinks to the girls, who seem highly interested in them. The next day at school, the two girls dress in a manner matching his kinks, but he is too daft to realize how deeply they love him. Instead, he complains about his sister for always bullying him. The loser gets pointed out that his sister loves him very much and is worried about his well-being. This changes his perspective, so he heads home to make her dinner after school, but as soon as he asks her what she wants, she discourages him and tells him to focus on his mid-semester's tests coming up. Upon hearing this, he gets mad at her and says she only cares about his grades, so he goes to his room and studies like a nerd trying to get into Harvard. The day of his test comes and he blitzes the questions easily, only for the loser to cross-check and realize that he had started answering above the designated area, but it was too late. The poor boy returns home sadly and his sister scolds him for getting a 0 in the papers. He would have gotten full marks if he had carefully answered them, so he listens to her words and accepts his faults. Later that night, while brooding concerning his low score and why his sister is ever so strict with him, he goes downstairs to have a glass of water, and it is then he realizes that his sister has been making lots of effort to learn how to prepare his favorite meal. This act makes the dunce realize that his sister loves him and is not only scolding him but also herself. Himiji walks about reading a book that is supposed to give her insights on how to deliver a love letter, but at the end of the day, he is handed pictures of himself in a maid outfit. Before then, Aki is woken up by his sister who wants to smother him in kisses, but he manages to obey the law. She then mentions making him breakfast, only for him to get downstairs and see drinkable calorie cans arranged on the table for him. After having his meal, he checks out voyeur in class who uses binoculars to size and grade the plots of the girls of their school. Not long before Akihisa peeps on them, Shimada walks him and performs some wrestling move sets on the poor boy who is driven by curiosity. Hideyoshi later enters wearing a female nurse's outfit, but this causes his twin sister, who is in class, to come to his class and scold him to get a grip on reality, unlike cosplayers. She insults him, his classmates, and even his grades before leaving with Shouko, who comes over to tease her beloved. Himiji, on the other hand, was going through her books and trying different methods to have her letter delivered to Akihisa, but all of them failed, either due to not having enough plot armor on her side, or almost triggering a death flag for Yuuji when she tried asking him to help her out. At one point, she tries offering him the letter through her handmade snacks, and this makes the brat bail like he saw something he shouldn't have. Eventually, he gets found out by Ironman and he is forced to help him move loads to the school vault, but on his way, his avatar trips and it causes Akihisa to feel the backlash, so all the papers get scattered. This leads to a mix and it has the students looking for their important materials. Akihisa and his friends come together with the power of friendship and agree to help each other out. On getting to the vault, they discover that they can't open it, but an unfamiliar face shows up and tells them to get him the key in Nishimura's office. The fools didn't even question why such a person knows the password, but they risk their lives and bring back the key like puppies playing fetch. Nemoto helps them get in and they recover their valuables. Hideyoshi spots him reading the test papers and challenges him, but he insults all of them and their class for not being smart and walks away with one of the question papers. This causes Akihisa to think deeply about the matter on the rooftop, so he asks Yuuji for advice. His loser for a friend suggests that they challenge other classes since it's been a while since they did such, so they all think up ways to rally the school. Akihisa then breaks into the vault and pours down the leaked mocked questions for the students, hereby foiling Nemoto's plans and having Nishimura on their trail. As soon as Nishimura shows up, they apologize sincerely and call it a prank. The strict teacher sees through them and decides to give them one of the toughest supplementary lessons ever, helping them proceed with their plans. A while after being taught rigorously by Nishimura, Akihisa loses to Yuuji and he is forced to go and declare war with Class D, and he ends up being beaten to a pulp. The principal is told by one of the staff that the inter-class war between classes D and F will be happening that afternoon. She sees Yuuji's profile and wonders why his grades have been dropping significantly, only for her to realize a pattern. The representatives of each class work on their strategies concerning the upcoming Avatar Wars. Among the plans, Akihisa is instructed to lead the assault team, but he has his ass handed to him by some members of Class D. Yuuji sees the outcome and uses it to judge the subjects each of those students is good at, so he places Shimada in the front line. The no-milkers brat charges through the field like a raging bull, eliminating the fodder D students across her paths. Upon seeing this, the losing class uses another strategy that involves kidnapping their teachers and forcing them to request a battle in their subjects, thereby forcing a handicap towards Shimada. One of the fodders of Class F runs to the announcement room and riles up his remaining single-ass classmates by saying Akihisa is being called by their math teacher to have a discussion that crosses the boundaries between students and teachers. This opens up a path for Himiji and she deals with the remaining D students. After getting to Class D, some D students who are hiding decide to jump Yuuji in his class since he is all alone but unknown to them. Yuuji has been concealing his ability, so he reverses their jump and his class ends up conquering Class D. Upon winning Class D, Yuuji doesn't take their facilities, but instead, he declares war on Class B, later that day by sending his manservant who gets inked all over. Class B and C representatives discuss how to handle Yuuji's class, but Nemoto concludes paying them back through underhanded means. After school hours, the main characters of Class F return to their class only to find their already ruined class in a frenzied state. This riles up the members of the class, but Yuuji calms them down and declares the start of their war with Class B. The two classes go head to head and Class F starts to lose their numbers, but Akihisa informs the losers of how their class rep is dating Class C's rep, and this triggers the students into going suicidal and decimating the foes ahead of them, giving Nishimura more than enough people to teach for the day. Akihisa later leaves to sheepishly talk with his crush, but he sees her confronting Nemoto concerning the havoc he put their class in. After noticing her mental state, he meets up with Yuuji to change plans and have him ambush Class B. Yuuji sees the determination in his eyes and approves his wish, and it makes the loser sacrifice his arm due to the impact of breaking through Class B walls to ambush Nemoto. Nemoto, who isn't alone, says he has thought about their strategy, but Voyeur breaks through the window and summons Nishimura as a helper, hence granting them victory against Class B. After the war ended, Yuuji speaks to all the members of Class B and offers them a condition for not having them move to their class. The losers must have their amiable rep out on a female summer uniform due to vandalizing their card box desks. The students agree immediately since no one wants to downgrade to a class of lower facilities. Akihisa later meets with Himeji on the rooftop to hand her back her letter, but she takes it from him and rips it into shreds, breaking his heart. She says she doesn't need a letter to convey her feelings, but would like to do so physically. She then asks if she can call him by his first name, and the bitch whimpers due to the fear of his mates killing him, but he later agrees with her. On the other side of the rooftop, Shaoko asks Yuuji why he started the inter-class war and guesses if it was because of the facilities, but Yuuji says he doesn't give a damn and he is only trying to prove to the world that grades aren't everything. Akihisa and his classmates train vigorously in a special space activated by his bracelet, but it malfunctions and they blame his mental age for it. The loser hears this and tries to defend himself, but he runs his mouth about how he has been reading adult books to prove he isn't a child. This gets him a lot of thrashing from the girls. On the day of their class battle, Akihisa's sister wakes him up and offers him food that'll help in his battle against his opponents, but all the loser can see is her eating the real thing while putting on a bikini to show her milkers. He tries his best to understand her, but his brain cannot fathom her level of reasoning. In class, Yuuji and friends come up with strategies to go against Class A. Firstly, he tricks the stupid Akihisa into trying to talk to her while holding one of her dearest treasures, but she beats him up and comes to their class to rant. Yuuji riles up her anger, causing her to accept the proposal. She later heads back to her class and sees Nemoto, who eagerly waits to challenge her, so the two classes go head-on. While Yuuji has Hideyoshi cosplay as his sister and trigger other classes into facing her class. Yuuji's plan goes smoothly and even leads to Nemoto losing his relationship with Class C's rep. Class A is then forced to take on Class C and Class E respectively, hereby wearing them out. Hideyoshi's sister heads to Class F to declare her onslaught against them and leaves. Due to the massive L Class F got from A, they are left only with drawing boards and mats, but they seem content with it. Shimada talks about how much she likes it, only for her to stare at Himeji, who struggles with hers due to her milkers covering her view, and this makes her jealous and rage like it's some boss fight. Immediately, Aki runs his mouth to pacify her. He gets a load of her anger due to him calling her flat-chested. Voyeur then uses the opportunity to get some perfect shots with his camera, only for him to be approached by his rival from Class A, who dares him to see what she's putting on, so the fool runs to meet his former homeroom teacher and asks that he permits them to use their avatars. The man asks him for a reason and the idiot doesn't cook up a lie, but says upfront that it's to remove a bra. This leads to him being denied his request. A while later, Akihisa whines like a bitch he is and doesn't want to accept his Class L, but Yuuji tells him to face reality, and there's nothing he can do. He keeps this moody attitude home that his sister starts to worry about him, so he tells her how pathetic he is while expecting her to support the idea instead. She praises him and gives him some Optimus Prime kind of pep talk while urging him to move forward. She then crashes the whole thing by suggesting to share a room with him or help him wash his back, which he denies. While having his bath, he recalls what she told him and makes up his mind to challenge Class A again, so the next day, he goes to the principal's office and requests to challenge the class he lost to. The old hag refuses his request, but Class A representatives also enter the room and plead with her since they do not consider their previous victory as a W, and this makes the principal return the favor she owes Aki by accepting his request. He goes back and informs his mates about it, but he tells them that he plans on going solo against Xiaoko even though they wouldn't be able to exchange facilities, but he'll have his request granted. This makes them all worried, so Yuuji asks him what would happen if he lost. But before Aki can respond, Xiaoko enters the class and says he'll return their marriage contract, and they'll go on a honeymoon after the match. Yuuji gets mad at him and tells him to win no matter what since his life is on the line. After school, Aki gets depressed on a swing and wonders if he can take on Xiaoko, but the plot brings Heizuki to him and has her hand him cookies and encourage him indirectly, so he thanks her and heads home to study like a champ. The day of the rematch arrives and the two candidates are placed on a podium, where they'll have to guess or write the correct answers to the questions given to them. Xiaoko appears to be normal, but we have Aki sweating buckets like he's being interrogated by the cops. The match commences and Yuuji encourages Aki since his life depends on it. The contestants both go head to head up till they reach the 30-second question. The question appears to be the one Aki keeps failing each time he encounters it, and this makes his classmates, especially Yuuji, uneasy. The red-haired boy, who had little hope in him, loses everything when he sees the fool rolling a pencil like a die to determine the correct year. Yuuji accepts fate that his life is ruined only for him to be surprised that Aki got the right score, and this makes his sad mood do a 180 and celebrates with him. After the event, he meets up with Xiaoko and asks her what happened. The black-haired cooter says she failed because of the promise she made to him while they were in elementary school, so he pats her head and apologizes, only for her to bring out the marriage contract and force him to go with her. Inside the hall, the principal congratulates Akihisa and says she'll fulfill his wish. Nishimura then urges Himeji to take the placement exams again, and it makes her realize that the fool wasted a chance to get better facilities for himself for her to get a slot into Class A. She then takes the tests, and when she is done, she begs Nishimura to let her go through it again. Of course, he refuses, but she pleads with him like a scout trying to get idols for their companies, so he agrees to her request. The following day, Aki goes to his class and greets his friends, only for him to see Himeji, so he asks the what she's doing in his class, but she claims it to be her class and hands out her exam results. He then stares at it and sees that she got a 0 because her name wasn't included in the paper. His friends smile at him, thinking he'll be happy, but the fool storms the principal's office and throws a lot of swear words at her, which shocks her herself. She then realizes that he is a fool for not being able to understand what actually happened, and as soon as she calls him an idiot, his friends who are outside her office do the same. And that is the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.